rude customer humiliates a young black waitress, oblivious to the powerful figure silently watching from the corner. What happens next will leave you speechless. Subscribe to see the shocking twist, and let us know where you're watching from. It was a busy evening at Bella's Bistro, a small but popular restaurant in the heart of Savannah, Georgia. The dining room buzzed with chatter and the clinking of plates as servers weaved between tables, balancing trays with practiced precision. Among them was Jasmine Porter, a young waitress with a warm smile and a calm demeanor, even when the restaurant was at its busiest. Jasmine loved her job, even though it wasn't always easy. Her colleagues respected her, and most customers appreciated her cheerful attitude. But not everyone was kind. That evening, she was about to meet one of the rudest customers she'd ever encountered, someone who would push her patience to its limits. The trouble started when an older woman named Linda Watson walked in. Linda was a regular at the bistro, but not the kind of regular anyone looked forward to serving. She was known for her sharp tongue and constant complaints, finding fault with everything from the decor to the food. But tonight, she seemed especially irritable. Jasmine greeted Linda with her usual warmth. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome back to Bella's. Can I start you off with something to drink?" Linda didn't bother to look up from her phone. "Just water," she snapped. "And don't take forever. I don't have all night." Jasmine nodded, brushing off the rudeness. She'd dealt with difficult customers before and knew better than to take it personally. She returned moments later with the water, only to have Linda frown at the glass. "This isn't cold enough," Linda said, pushing the glass away. "Do you even know how to do your job?" Jasmine's smile faltered for a split second, but she kept her voice polite. "I'm sorry about that, ma'am. I'll get you another one." As Jasmine walked away, Linda muttered under her breath, loud enough for the nearby diners to hear, "Can't expect much from people like her." The words stung, but Jasmine refused to let it show. She returned with a fresh glass of ice water, placing it gently on the table. "Here you go, ma'am. Is there anything else I can get for you?" Linda barely glanced at her. "About time. Now bring me the chicken Alfredo, and don't mess it up." Jasmine nodded and left to place the order, her steps steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. She was used to rude customers, but something about Linda's tone felt more personal. While Linda waited for her food, she continued to make snide comments, loudly criticizing the service and even Jasmine's appearance. Other diners exchanged uncomfortable glances, but no one said anything. Jasmine, however, stayed professional, determined not to let Linda's behavior ruin her evening. When the food finally arrived, Linda didn't even take a bite before complaining. "This is cold, and it looks terrible. Is this what you call food?" She shoved the plate toward Jasmine, nearly spilling it. Jasmine took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly as she picked up the plate. "I'll have the kitchen remake it for you, ma'am," she said calmly, even though her patience was wearing thin. As Jasmine walked away, Linda shook her head in disgust. "Unbelievable," she said loudly. "You'd think they'd hire better people in a place like this." What Linda didn't realize was that someone had been watching her the entire time. Someone who was about to make her regret every word she'd said. As Jasmine disappeared into the kitchen to get Linda's food remade, the dining room began to buzz, not with the usual dinner chatter, but with murmurs about Linda's behavior. The other diners exchanged glances, whispering to each other about how unnecessarily cruel she had been. At the corner table, an older man in a tailored navy suit put down his fork and leaned back in his chair. He had been quietly observing the entire scene, his expression unreadable, but the tension in his posture made it clear he was not impressed with what he had seen. Linda, oblivious to the stares she was attracting, continued scrolling on her phone. She looked up only when Jasmine returned with a new plate of chicken Alfredo, her movements careful but steady. "Here you go, ma'am," Jasmine said softly, placing the plate down. "I hope this is better for you." Linda didn't even thank her. She stabbed her fork into the food, took one bite, and immediately scrunched her face. "This is disgusting. Is it that hard to cook pasta properly? Honestly, I don't know why you're even working here. Maybe you should stick to jobs that don't require actual skill." The words hit Jasmine like a slap, but before she could respond, the man in the navy suit stood up. He placed his napkin neatly on the table and walked over, his calm presence immediately drawing everyone's attention. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his deep voice cutting through the tension. "I couldn't help but notice how you've been speaking to this young lady." Linda blinked up at him, clearly annoyed. "And who are you to get involved in my business?" The man smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in his expression. "My name is Richard Carter," he said. "I'm the owner of this restaurant." Linda's mouth fell open slightly, and the color drained from her face. She stammered, "Oh, I didn't realize." Richard held up a hand, silencing her. "I didn't introduce myself earlier because I like to observe my staff in action. It's how I ensure this restaurant runs smoothly. And tonight, I've seen Jasmine handle your behavior with more patience and grace than most people would have." The room fell silent, every pair of eyes now fixed on Linda. She squirmed in her seat, suddenly self-conscious. Richard continued, his tone firm but controlled. "While we value our customers, we also value respect. And what you've shown tonight is the opposite of that. My staff are not here to be belittled or humiliated." Linda opened her mouth to protest, but Richard didn't give her a chance. "As the owner, I have the right to refuse service to anyone who disrupts the atmosphere of my establishment. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to leave." The words hung in the air, and Linda's face turned red with embarrassment. She glanced around, realizing the entire room was watching. Some diners even nodded in agreement, their expressions a mix of satisfaction and approval. "I didn't mean any harm," Linda muttered, gathering her purse and standing abruptly. "I was just frustrated, that's all." Richard didn't waver. "Frustration is no excuse for disrespect. Jasmine has shown you more kindness than you deserve tonight. I suggest you reflect on that." Without another word, Linda hurried toward the door, her head down. The sound of her heels clicking against the floor was the only noise in the otherwise silent restaurant. As the door closed behind her, the room erupted into quiet applause. Jasmine stood frozen, her cheeks flushing with surprise. Richard turned to her, his expression softening. "You handled that incredibly well," he said. "I'm proud of you. People like that are rare, but it's how we respond to them that matters." Jasmine smiled, a mix of relief and gratitude washing over her. "Thank you, Mr. Carter." Richard nodded and patted her shoulder lightly. "Take a quick break, Jasmine. You've earned it." As Jasmine stepped into the back to catch her breath, the energy in the restaurant shifted back to normal. The other diners returned to their meals, their smiles reflecting a newfound respect for the waitress who had endured so much with quiet dignity. Jasmine knew this wouldn't be the last time she faced someone like Linda. But tonight, she walked away feeling stronger, knowing she wasn't alone, and that kindness and fairness would always have the final word.